Season 3, Episode 3. Welcome to this week's edition of 15 Minutes with Fuzz. My name is Fuzz Martin, and this is a show about the positive things happening in and around Washington County, Wisconsin. Today, we're going to focus on the around part of that statement as we're joined by Jeannie Lord, the Executive Director of Pineview Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center in Fredonia. Jeannie joins me for a lively discussion about the mission of Pineview, how it got started, what kind of animals they serve, and how you can get involved. With that, here are 15 plus minutes on Pineview Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center with Jeannie Lord on 15 Minutes with Fuzz. Jeannie, thank you so much for coming in and joining me today. Let's talk about Pineview Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Can you share with us the mission of Pineview and how it contributes to our local communities here in Wisconsin?
Sure. It's the Pineview Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center in that since its conception back in 1981, and we're moving into our 42nd year. In addition to servicing the communities with their wildlife needs and questions and concerns, we are also a major educational force, serving most of southeastern Wisconsin for these 42 years. I've been very privileged to not only be an educator and continue to do so, and combine wildlife education and wildlife rehabilitation. So we're dual purpose, but the overarching is protection, preservation, and sustainability for a very fragile environment.
So, Jeannie, before we started recording, you had said you're the executive director, but also the founder?
Yes, and the master cage cleaner. That's my claim to fame, Buzz.
That sounds wonderful. What gave you the idea to start Pineview?
At the time, my husband and I have, and still have, an 1869 farmstead, and lots of land, and lots comparatively speaking, 25 acres. And we decided, because we both taught and we had the summers off, it was time to start something that we both felt good about in terms of either benefiting wildlife or companion animals. And after some training and education, which we still do, we chose to develop the outbuildings and create a wildlife hospital. He and my family, who were very supportive, he died 20 years ago. My mom and dad are dead. And I have two stepdaughters and my own daughter who continue to negotiate to move us forward because I'm an airhead when it comes to technical advances. But the passion is remaining, and the need is more now than it has been since 1981.
Okay, I bet. You said you covered all of southeastern Wisconsin, is that correct?
Educationally, yes.
Okay.
We used to do educational outreach as far south as Racine and Kenosha. We have, and I'm pretty sure this is a fact and not just something I'm creating. I believe in all these years we've been to all of the schools in Washington County and most in Ozaukee County as well. Those are our home bases. But because the program grew, the need was there, especially 1999, 2000, there was a real emphasis on environmental education. Mm-hmm. Things have changed curriculum-wise in schools. So we did find ourselves, we've been up to Appleton, we've been up to Green Bay. We're honing in now on what the needs are in these communities rather than the education. As a result of COVID, as a result of curriculum changes in the state, doing programs in schools has become more of a challenge. So what we've developed, our educational team of Pineview, is creating modules and educational activities that we can distribute to schools, get into the classrooms, and also 2024, we will be going virtual. Not all kids have an opportunity to walk to a library, have a computer at home. 6,000 individuals, I believe, in Fond du Lac are without broadband.
Well, okay.
So part of our focus always has been on DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we reach Milwaukee, we reach urban, suburban, and rural areas throughout this part of the state right now, and we're going to grow that and go with it. And when we address issues of why we're outside of our county, as we're celebrating 42 years, there are some rehab centers and individuals who have retired or found this was not financially viable, which we understand. So we've specialized over the last 20 years. We used to admit all species indigenous to Wisconsin, from deer to fox to raccoon. And as things progressed and we changed and traded skills with other rehabilitators, we now admit owls, hawks, eagles, and falcons. and we specialize in reptiles and amphibians as well. So it's unusual. Maybe someone would say, well, why are you getting or admitting a turtle from Racine? Because there's no rehabilitator in that area that does. So we network with other rehabilitation centers, including like Fellow Mortals, who's in Lake Geneva. We no longer admit the small songbirds, your passerines, Canada geese, so we'll exchange phone calls and numbers for those community members that have this patient. Where do we go with it? What do we do? So that's why our servicing communities has grown. We also have established task force. About 6 years ago, we were in Franklin. There was an issue with all of a sudden a surge of coyotes in people's backyards, and combined with that are myths, okay?
Yeah.
The DNR have observed, wildlife biologists on a recent podcast, that given certain circumstances, a lot of animals had to have adapted because of habitat eradication. And why there was a prolific number in this specific area is that year they eradicated 200 acres and put in condos.
Yeah.
So it would not be unfamiliar to have a coyote running through your backyard. And the DNR established they were here before we were.
Yeah.
It's clear. And we've got to be cautious. If you've got a little Chihuahua or small dog and you've got a huge acreage, walk them out there.
Right.
Not just a coyote. And in our 41 years, we've only had one incident where an owl has flown down to protect its young from a small animal.
Sure.
So we provide education, facts and data. That dispels myths. And in addition to that, we have a response from... Our phones are available from 8 in the morning, depending on the season, till 6 at night. And that's 365 days a year.
Wow, okay.
But we have a small staff, small resources, so we will not always be able to respond to your call if one of our staff and our manager is out on a rescue and we're caring for animals, but we'll always get back to you.
Where are you located, by the way?
Northern Ozaukee County,
Okay.
in Little Kohler.
Oh, okay.
Near Fredonia. It's a bar and a church in Pineview.
Perfect. Talking about those calls, if somebody sees an animal that is injured or needs to be rescued, what is the process? They first call you? Or?
First call us, and they'll get our recording, and it'll share with you if you have a species that is not an owl, hawk, eagle, falcon, badger, reptile, or amphibian. We do not admit those to our facility, but we suggest they call the DNR. They call their local humane society. There'll be a list of rehabbers there. It's also online. And that will, at least at that point in time, tell them, okay, Pineview's not going to be able to assist us with this. But we also encourage them, don't feed, don't give water.
Okay.
And the simple reason, and people have said, well, why can't we give it water? It's hot out. And what we share with kids when we do an educational program, if you're injured and if you're taken to the hospital, you are not given a pizza. You're not given water to drink or a popsicle. Same thing. Stress and fear can kill. Get them in a box, keep them quiet.
Okay.
Some basics, and it's also on our webpage. What do you do when you find an injured bird or an animal?
Are you asking me what?
No. Rhetorical question.
Oh, no.
To answer the question, an addendum.
Don't give them pizza.
Yes, no water. Please don't let them play with your dog.
Yeah.
And that also is in alignment with one of our major mantras, and there's no such thing as a pet wild animal. We have an owl on our property that is an ambassador, meaning it goes on education with us. People had it in their homes for over 4.5 weeks, had it in a kennel cab, and was feeding it bratwurst, hamburger, other foods. And after the 4 weeks, it was on its keel, on its chest.
Yep.
The back end, the cloaca, was just filled with its own fluids and excrement because it can't digest that.
Right.
And as a result, that bird is what we call imprinted. It thinks we are its co-partner. So our message is very intent out there, the do's and don'ts. And the other side is you don't have a right to do it.
Right.
On our recent educational program, we were in Eagle, Wisconsin. We bring along a example of people's good intentions. It's quite common in spring when the young painted turtles hatch.
Yep.
Oh, let's bring one home. Number one, why would you do that? Number two, you don't have a right. 3, they will die because you don't know what to feed it. And it's going to grow, and you can't take it back to the wild because it's lost its ability to function, and it'll try to get back to its habitat. We have a turtle that was kept in a 2-gallon aquarium for close to a year with a light bulb.
Oh, geez.
They eat 64 different species of food out in the wild. That turtle shell is debrided, as it were. It's concave.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to our rehab, it's healing in terms of expansion of that shell. It can never be released. Those ambassadors help us get the message out.
Wow.
You don't have a right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, we don't even take care of our dogs and cats and our companion animals.
Right.
That's an opinion.
No, I know, but I agree with you, and this is all extremely fascinating. And by the way, I grew up on Eagle Springs Lake, so I've seen a paint a turtle or two in my lifetime.
Oh, of course. Oh my gosh, yes. Well, when we discuss our opportunities to carry our message statewide, Eagle is, and they've got a beautiful school. They've got a facility there that is now set aside for the environment. So hopefully, getting messages about being proactive and sustainability. And we start at kindergarten, go up to 8th grade with our programs.
That's great. That's wonderful. And again, this is, I always say on the show, a lot of this is me learning the idea for this show. And Lisa Pence, who's our CFO here at Epic Creative, had told me about Pineview, and I am just so glad she did. I'm very fascinated with all of these stories. So thank you for.
Well, and to tailgate that, even after 42 years of being privileged to work with wildlife and kids, I will always share with people we are still outfoxed by some of our admits, and it's an ongoing learning process. It would be arrogant to assume we know anything about everything. So I'm just tailgating that.
No, that's wonderful. So as Pineview Rehabilitation Center, obviously small organization, not a lot of staff, you definitely have needs, right? Do you have a wish list or some of the building needs and things that you have at Pineview? We
do. And as nonprofits go, there are so many aspects to its operation and its future, a future for a nonprofit. And what we have relied on and continue to, and this is a shout out to our volunteers and to our membership, as a small nonprofit, especially with wildlife, if I were to present you a pie, because I do real well with those, and this analogy was presented when we went for fundraising back in the day, and when we participate with major philanthropic opportunities to learn how to do fundraising, when you took that pie wedge, the major divisions went to human needs, and I completely understand that. And there were two little slivers left on the bottom, and one of those little slivers was companion animals, your humane societies, and divide that little section again, and that's to the environment. And so it's been a constant ongoing challenge. And as a result of that, people assume that throughout the nation that wildlife rehabilitation, whether they're centers or individuals, are sponsored and paid for by the federal government and the state or county. Absolutely not. So when we have interns on the property, because we do train and we have field experience and kids that want to volunteer, this is the wrong career to approach if you think you're going to be driving a Mercedes. And I should not use brand names here, but expensive tennis shoes. It has to be a commitment to this earth and to the environment. The frustrations that are encompassed because of political and financial needs, depending on the state you're in, much wildlife is often thought of even now as a commodity, a consumer good. So to answer your question, it is because of our membership that we are allowed to grow sustainably. Unfortunately, those numbers are dropping when there is a generation coming up that, well, when do I get paid? Do I have a IRA account? Honey, that ain't happening. We'll do the best we can to supply what we can. Yeah. But the passion and the commitment to the earth, to moving a very fragile global environment forward, drives many of us, as well as our membership. They know where the buck goes, and I'm putting that at a basic level. We do tours on the property, we provide an opportunity, and we handwrite thank yous for your donation. It went here, it went here. And someone will say, I'm going to donate this so that you can purchase a new lawnmower. And that's got to be respected. And for anyone that's visited us, knows us, seen our programs, what you get is what is up front here. Transparency, if I'm using a trendy word. But it is an uphill battle. So we will usually put out in our newsletters a wish list. And back in the day when we started Fuzz, we did not have enough money to purchase a hose that would run down to the duck and goose pen. So $20 was appreciated. Yeah. And even though we've evolved, there's a very competitive field. And wildlife has become less of a priority right now, and I can understand that. But for anyone that appreciates being outdoors, enjoys hearing that bird sing, enjoys the loons up north, hearing that robin in your backyard, if we're going to continue a sustainable sharing this earth, wildlife rehabilitation is often that instrument that can at least try to preserve and maintain and release that bird or animal back to the wild.
Sure. As the climate changes and as we're seeing some of this, are you seeing an impact at Pineview?
Oh, definitely. And this is nothing political. I will not voice an opinion. The data's out there. Whether an individual, a citizen in our country, listens to the news or reads the newspaper or watches TV, one cannot argue that there are parts off of the Florida coast right now, for anyone that loves that area, the water temperatures are 100 degrees. What we preach, what we practice is causal relationships. It cannot be denied that we have an impact and have had forever, and it's finally catching up how we live our lives. There's a definite correlation, and I'm going to use a brand name here, feel free, whatever, but common pesticides, rodenticides have a trickle down. I would love it if we could do away with one of the major recognizable products that are in any hardware store. The spray, the pesticide goes into the earth. And I'm going to down this for a little bit for an example. That earthworm that is affected by that chemical is eaten by a robin. The robin is eaten by a bird of prey. We have toxicity. We will admit a bird that has second ingestion warfarin poisoning. The lead that is being used, the numbers of loons and eagles that are admitted to wildlife hospitals has increased. If we are not able to rescue that bird in time, no matter what type of anti-lead medicines that we can inject or administer, it will die. And what the public is not aware of is that, yes, we've had successes releasing them after they've been loaded with lead. I'm just using a general term here. They cannot be assured yet, the documentation, that that bird is not going to be more suspect to having a heart attack and also developing cataracts. The number of insects, this is just general information, we've observed on our property, even though we've had pollinators for 20 years, the number of monarch butterflies, a child in second grade already knows. Why is that number dropping? Causal relationships. Our impact on this earth can no longer be denied. It's obvious. So when you have less insects, you have insectivores, birds that are coming up here, needing food to raise their young. I believe, and if there's a specialist out there, correct me on this number, over 3 million birds have died in the last couple of years.
Wow.
More every year. That would be a topic with exact numbers. Causal relationships, it's out there. And the temperatures, the effects, over 110 days, 2 of our states have had over 100 degrees. There is not air conditioning available. And the fires that we've had. Where are those turtles going to go when there's a fire coming? Those that are box turtles that are living in the woods. And the National Geographic had a very prolific, right there in your face example. Near the redwoods, with the fires a couple years ago in California, there was a female red-tailed hawk dead, and right under the nest on the ground was the young one. A lot of silent suffering.
Yeah.
Definite relationship between, and I don't even want to think about my co-partners that are on the coast that are dealing with all these mammals. Water temperatures, and we wonder why the sharks are in areas that they haven't been before. It is catastrophic.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. We appreciate that. And it's important, I think, that people hear that from people who live in the animal rehabilitation world, because you see this kind of stuff every day, whereas a lot of us don't think about it. We see what we see on the news and we see what we want to see and then turn on Netflix and forget about it.
Good point. The media is becoming an ally in many respects. I think I heard it in a conversation at one of our local grocery stores. Why are we having a no May mow time? And number one, there was a drought. Number two, people may not be aware of this, but with Fireflies, their first 2 years are underground. So imagine no moisture and a variety of our chemicals and pesticides. That's why we're not seeing so many fireflies.
Sure. At Pineview Wildlife Rehabilitation Center and Education Center, are there volunteer opportunities? Are there needs that way? How can people get involved?
We would not be where we are without our volunteers. They are the lifeline. They are the lifeblood. They are our best ambassadors, dedicated beyond. And I cannot recognize, and I hope some of them are listening. And most prominent example is there was a woman from West Bend who just passed 2 years ago. She has set the bar for any young adult coming on our property. She died at 92. All of us were sad. She could no longer continue doing her work, her volunteer work of 22 years at Pineview.
Wow.
Every Thursday. She would not listen to me when I called her and said, please don't come, it's snowing. All I would get is bye. She drove for 23 years every Thursday morning, cleaned up, was not interested if her shoes got dirty. We've got volunteers that do drives. We have 7 to 8 volunteers that will drive up to Manitowoc, will drive to Racine. There are 2 volunteers that live in East Troy. They just brought an immature eagle. They picked it up at another rehab facility, came from East Troy, went to Lake Geneva, brought it to us, went back home.
Wow.
Invaluable.
Yep.
One has to be 18 to volunteer.
Okay.
And one has to know you're going to get dirty and grubby. And after a 3-hour, we have a 3-hour to 4-hour stint on one morning a week. 99% is going to be cleanup work, but that 1%, when you get in your car, you know you've helped wildlife.
If somebody wants to get involved, how should they go about reaching out?
Call our rehab number, which is 262-692-9021. We have a Facebook and a web page. It's only to disseminate information. We don't engage in any conversation, any questions.
Okay.
It's to provide the public with information. But our 9021 number is the best vehicle in which to get a hold of me or our manager.
Perfect. And then in the same regard, if somebody wants to make a donation or attend one of your events, all that information available on your website?
It is available on the website. They can always call, and we are set up with PayPal, especially on the website, and they can also become a member.
Great. Jeannie, thank you. This was an excellent conversation. I appreciate all that you guys do, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you for the opportunity to help us get the word about this fragile earth, and we're all in it together. Thank you.
Thank you again to Jeannie Lord of Pineview Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center for joining me on this week's episode. If you ever have an idea for the show, please reach out. Email 15withfuzz@gmail.com. Be sure to spell out 15 as the word, not the number, 15withfuzz@gmail.com. Or you can simply go to fuzz.cc/guest and fill in the form. Easy peasy. New episodes come out every Tuesday, and I've got some bangers this season. Does anyone still say bangers when something's cool? No? Well, more great guests coming up to be sure. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk with you again next Tuesday right here on 15 Minutes with Fuzz.